So picture this if you can. You're at a tournament. You've been fighting a really good fight the entire time, and the score is 4-4. And the judge proudly stands up in front of everybody at the center of the ring and says, final exchange, sudden death, whatever the rule set says it is. And that means that the next point is going to win or lose you the exchange. And you have the perfect plan. You go out and you're in your perfect left plow. The exact same guard you've had for every other exchange that fight, but this one is perfect. You go out there, you stand in the center of the ring, and they say fight. And you know exactly what you're waiting for. You're waiting for that telltale pump of the right shoulder of your opponent, because you know that when you see that, they're going to throw that cut right at your head, and you'll be ready for them. So you're in your perfect left plow, and you see the signal, the right pump. So you meticulously, expertly move your left plow into a left ox. You're really fucking cooking. That cut is going to come sailing by, and it's going to land squarely where you want it to, right in the crossguard, right there. And after then, that's when the real good shit's going to happen. And all of a sudden, what the fuck just happened? You look down, and there's a new white line on your knee that didn't used to be there. You look up, the director already said halt. What the hell's going on? You just got hit by.
All right.
No, you just got struck by.
Enough of the green screen.
A mediocre Geisling.
Enough of the stories.
Time to just talk about HEMA. This is my dingy, disgusting basement where the real training and the real HEMA happens. And you're here right now because this discussion around Geislings, it gets a little heated and it gets a little fabricated. So the thing about Geislings that a lot of people don't want to hear is that they're not special. You go back and you listen to that story and you think about what exactly is it that makes Geislings so hated. Now, I think that it has nothing to do with its historical accuracy, its ability to cut, none of that. It has to do with that experience, that feeling you get when you get hit with a Geisling that you did not expect. And it feels like shit. It's embarrassing to get hit by something like that. It's anticlimactic. When you're in a fight and you're enjoying yourself and your fight ends that way, it can feel like your entire day was ruined. And I think that feeling is really what needs to be talked about, because that feeling is what drives a lot of this discussion. Think about it this way. A one-handed thrust has all the same advantages, disadvantages, questions of historical accuracy that you could have about the Geisling. Yeah, it doesn't have its cutting mechanic crap, but thrusts need structure too. So there's all kinds of things that you could say about one-handed thrust that you could say about the Geisling, and yet it never gets that kind of hate. You could say all kinds of things about flat shield hows that curve over other people's guards and stick them in the chest. You could say all kinds of things about grappling and how pommel strikes sometimes are called when they really shouldn't be, because like a pommel makes contact with a mask, but there was an arm in the way and you couldn't really move. There's no shortage of things that occur in tournaments that other people could say shouldn't be there. We're all aware of that fact. But again, the Geisling stands alone as the most hated and most reviled version of those things. And that feeling, I think, is the sole reason why. But if you want to solve the problem of Geislings, there's really only two things you can do. One is ban it. Just ban it. Two is learn how to deal with it. And this is the one that I think really motivates which option you choose based on that feeling. Because when you have a feeling of frustration and anger towards a technique, you want to ban it. You don't want to learn how to deal with it. And most importantly of all, this runs up against a very common thing I see in HEMA, which is this idea that if it's not in your source, if it's not taught by your master, if it's not something your instructor brings up, then it's illegitimate. And I think the thing that we need to start talking about when we talk about techniques, specifically the ones that we really want to ban, is the tactics that go into making them work, not the technicalities. And here's what I mean by that. Where did I put my fucking sword? Okay? Here's how a Geisling works. You take your one hand, your offhand, you put it all the way down on the grip. Why? Because swords, specifically long swords, regardless of whether or not they're period, fictitious, or just fetters, generally have like an 8 to 10 inch grip. When you grip your sword by the bottom, you add 8 to 10 inches of reach to your attack. And it's as simple as that. Hitting somebody in the knee normally requires a pretty decent amount of commitment. Hitting them in the knee with one hand on your sword requires significantly less. And I'm not going to talk about the specifics of this technique, but what I am going to talk about is the tactics involved here. And what a lot of people don't appreciate is that Geislings, even when thrown poorly, are a very good tactical decision. Why? Because they are low risk and middling to high reward, depending on the rule set. And again, take yourself back to that story. It's tied up. All you need is 1 point. Generally, hitting someone in the leg only gives you 1 point, but it's exactly that point that you need, and it's exactly the point that you want. So going with the lowest risk, longest range, most easily to get out of dodge option is the option that you tactically should choose. So why does that matter? You can ban the Geisling all you want, but you can't ban the tactical advantage implicit in this scenario. You can't get rid of the fact that the Geisling in this situation is an objectively smart decision to come away with a win. No matter what you do, tournaments are going to have win conditions. They're going to have situations in which, due to the rules, due to the system of points, due to whatever you make it, there's going to be a change in the way that people think when it comes to what technique they should throw and why. If I'm in that situation where it's tied up and it's final exchange, this is not the time to charge and grapple, because charging and grappling can get you good points. It puts you in a situation where you have to bypass so many layers of risk before you get to your ideal area. I'm not saying that nobody ever wins a final exchange on a grapple. I'm sure it happens all the time. But final exchange is meant to put you in a headspace where you go, oh, okay, I'm going to change what I've been doing because what I've been doing has been designed for the fight up till now. Now is a different context. Now I need a different set of tactics. And now this Geisling looks like a way better option than it did 5 minutes ago. No matter what you do, the tactics of this are always going to be sound. And the reality is that you can ban the Geisling and people will instead throw some version of a one-handed attack that gives all the same tactical advantages and isn't a Geisling. They're going to throw one-handed thrusts. They're going to throw one-handed cuts horizontal to the hands. There's lots of different things. Arguably, one-handed thrusts are even better than Geislings. People should be doing them more. Sometimes they're worth 2 points. There's all kinds of different problems at play here. It's not the Geisling, it's the feeling. But for the point here, what we're going to talk about is how to deal with a Geisling. And in my opinion, the plate that I've shown a couple of times here is not the best way to deal with the Geisling. The best way to deal with the Geisling comes from, again, the tactical problem of being able to throw a Geisling at low risk. In order to change whether or not a Geisling is a viable option, you have to change its inherent risk. And its inherent risk comes from its reach. So what do? Well, when someone throws a Geisling, it's generally because you're sitting with one leg forward on the ground, as you pretty much have to be doing, and your knee is probably a good 3 or 4 inches closer to them than your face, which means that when they throw it at your leg, you can't parry it, and it's hard to get your leg out of the way. But more importantly, it's hard to get your leg out of the way and hit them back at the same time. These are the parameters that you need in your Geisling counterattack to make it so that someone can't just simply throw as many Geislings as they can whenever they want and get away with it risk-free. Because remember, If I throw a technique and it doesn't hit, I haven't lost anything. If I throw a technique and I get hit back, now I've lost something. And that's what you need to have in your Geisling counter. So what are we going to do? We're in a stance, and our problem is that there's weight on our front leg. No matter what we try to do to move this leg, some part of that movement has to involve taking the weight off of that leg, picking it up, and moving it somewhere else. It's a 3-stage process. We can do 3 stages pretty quick, but not faster than you can do that, especially given that you have to react to what someone is doing. So what do you do instead? Well, what we're going to do is a version of a shuffle step here. Basically, you're going to take your front leg, you're going to leave the weight on it, and you're going to push it back to your back foot. Now you see what's kind of happened here. I've left my hips where they were, sucked in my gut a little bit, and left my upper body hanging in the air. This is a very unbalanced position, and it's very uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. But the reason we do it this way is because it cuts out the weight shift phase of moving my knee. It gets it out of the way, and it gets it back, most importantly, to my back leg. The reason it's important that it goes to your back leg is because if someone throws a Geisling deep enough to hit you in the back leg, there was nothing you could do. You have to jump. No one's jumping. So take your front foot, slide it back to your back leg. Then, while your upper body is hanging in the air, hit them in the head. Why does this work? Primarily because if you take a full step backwards, this is where I have to now throw my attack from. I'm further away. Presumably, after my opponent has thrown their Geisling, they're going to be moving away. Every inch of backwards that I go to get out of the way of that Geisling is another inch I have to make up when I throw my counterattack. This is why Geislings can feel so low risk, because when people are dodging them, they're putting everything they have into getting out of the way, and suddenly they realize they have absolutely nothing to come back with. So again, you're going to shuffle that leg back, and while you're hanging in the air, bop them in the head. And the best thing about this is that you can do it simultaneously. You can shuffle and strike at the same time. If you are so good that you know that that Geisling is coming, this is a technique that the person throwing the Geisling will get hit by. And again, the way we deal with this Geisling is we deal with it tactically. We give them a situation in which they have no hope of throwing a low risk, high reward scenario. All right, that's it. If you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'll be making more videos like this with my brand new green screen. And if you hate it, I don't know, make fun of me. Call me an ahistorical idiot.